Welcome to Monk's Temple. Find a place where you can rest. Let the day's scaffolding, the plans, the worries, the mental lists, soften and fall away. There is nothing you need to do right now but listen. Feel the weight of your body being held, by the chair, by the floor, by the earth itself. Notice your breath. Not changing it, just following its natural tide. In and out. This is where we begin. Not with complex theories, but with the simple, undeniable fact of being here. For thousands of years, human beings have looked at the stars and into their own hearts, asking the same essential questions. Why do I feel this way? Where does suffering come from? Is there a way to live that isn't so fraught with struggle? A seeker in ancient India sat with these questions with such fierce sincerity that his inquiry cracked the world open. He didn't find a secret password or a magical incantation. He discovered a set of natural laws, as real and observable as the law of gravity. He saw how life actually works. And the beautiful, liberating truth is this: you can see it too. You don't need to go to a mountain cave. You just need to learn to look, with gentle and persistent attention, at the garden of your own mind. Tonight, we will wander through that garden together. We'll learn to name the flowers and the weeds, understand the weather patterns, and feel the deep, nourishing soil from which everything grows. Our journey won't follow a straight, logical line. Truth isn't linear. It's more like a spiral, where we return to the same center again and again, each time from a slightly different angle, seeing it more deeply. So let go of the need to figure it all out at once. Just settle in. Let the words wash over you. The understanding will sink in its own time, like rain into parched earth. We'll start not at the beginning of a chain, but in the very heart of our lived experience. Let's talk about suffering. Not in a morbid or fearful way, but with clear, compassionate eyes. The word used is dukkha. It doesn't just mean acute pain or tragedy. It points to a subtle, pervasive sense that things are never quite complete, never quite settled, never quite enough. It's the background hum of dissatisfaction. The friction of being a sensitive, aware creature in a world that is constantly changing. Imagine you are holding a beautiful, perfect sphere of crystal. It feels cool and solid in your hand. You admire its clarity. But you notice, no matter how carefully you turn it, your fingers always smudge the surface. You can never see the entire, perfect sphere all at once from all angles. There's always a fingerprint in the way, a distortion, a point of contact that obscures the perfect view. Dukkha is like that fingerprint. It is the inherent friction of contact, of being someone experiencing something. It's not that the crystal is flawed. It's that the act of holding it creates the smudge. The first truth is simply to acknowledge this. To say, yes, life, in its conditioned, embodied form, has this quality. There is physical discomfort, illness, aging. There is emotional pain, loss, heartbreak. There is the stress of uncertainty. Even in our joys, there's often a whisper, a knowing that this too will pass. To deny this is to fight reality. And that fight is exhausting. The first step toward peace is to stop fighting the basic terms of existence. It is to look at the smudged crystal and say, yes, this is what it is to hold something beautiful. The smudge is part of the experience. Now, within this truth, there is a crucial distinction that is the master key to freedom. It is the difference between pain and suffering. Pain is the first arrow. It is the direct, sensory experience, the stubbed toe, the pang of grief, the ache of loneliness. It is raw, immediate, and often unavoidable. Suffering is the second, third, and 100th arrow. It is everything our mind adds to the initial sensation. It is the story, why did this happen to me? This is unbearable. It will always be like this. What's wrong with me for feeling this? Suffering is the mental amplification, the resistance, the catastrophic projection. I saw this play out with breathtaking clarity in an unlikely place, an airport terminal during a massive storm delay. Flights were cancelled for hours. Gates were chaotic. Next to me sat a woman in her 60s, knitting with calm, rhythmic motions. Across the aisle, a man in a business suit was literally red-faced, pacing, yelling into his phone, muttering about incompetence. Both were experiencing the same first arrows: frustration, inconvenience, uncertainty. The woman was feeling the pain of the situation. The man was drowning in suffering. She had made space for the discomfort. He was at war with it. Her needles clicked steadily, a metronome of acceptance. His anger was a furious, futile protest against the weather itself. The revolutionary teaching is this: we cannot always avoid the first arrow, but we can learn, absolutely, to stop shooting the second one. Our practice is to create a gap between the sensation and the story. To feel the ache in the lower back and know it as tightness, pressure, warmth, instead of immediately launching into, my back is gone. I'll never be able to garden again. I'm falling apart. The sensation is what it is. The story is optional. It is the extra layer we paint onto reality, and it is in that layer that most of our misery lives. Let me tell you an original story, set in the Red Rock Canyons of Utah. A seasoned rock climber named Eli was teaching a novice, Maya, how to navigate a tricky overhang. Maya kept falling at the same spot. After her fifth fall, she was hanging from her rope, furious. I can't do it. This move is impossible. My arms are too weak. Eli called down calmly. Maya, listen. The rock isn't causing your frustration. The rock is just there. Your thought, I can't, is the overhang you can't get past. Feel the burn in your muscles. That's information. The story you're telling about the burn is what's weighing you down. He was pointing to the second arrow. The muscle fatigue was real, first arrow. The identity of, I'm too weak, and the projection of, I'll never make it, second arrows, were what truly paralyzed her. When she finally let go of the story and just focused on the precise feeling of her fingertips on the stone, the movement unfolded naturally. The obstacle wasn't the rock, it was the narrative she had grafted onto the experience. This is where we start our real work. Not by trying to make life pain-free, but by cleaning the lens of our perception. By learning to distinguish the clean ache of existence from the muddy, painful stories we drown it in. It is the most compassionate thing we can do for ourselves. If this way of looking at your experience feels like a window opening in a stuffy room, consider subscribing to Monk's Temple. It's a simple way to keep this fresh air flowing, to have a companion on this journey of gentle seeing. Your presence here is a light. Now, shall we continue? Let's continue. Settle back into your seat. Feel the gentle rise and fall of your chest. There is nowhere to rush to. All the understanding we need is already here, in this moment, waiting to be noticed. We've looked at the nature of suffering, seeing how much of it is our own addition, a story we tell on top of the raw sensation of life. Now, we turn our gaze to a fundamental question: where does anything come from? That sudden anger, that burst of joy, that stubborn worry. It feels so personal, so mine. But what if we are not the sole authors of our inner weather? What if we are more like gardeners in a vast, interconnected ecosystem, where every seed, every drop of rain, every ray of sun contributes to what grows? The awakened mind discovered a principle so foundational it was called the heart of the wisdom. Dependent origination. It sounds philosophical, but it is breathtakingly practical. It means simply this: nothing, not a thought, not a feeling, not an event, arises alone. Everything comes into being because of causes and conditions. Everything is in relationship. You are not a solid island of self, but a shimmering network of influences, a meeting point where the universe converges. Think of your mind as a vast, silent loom. This loom sits in a room with many open windows. Through one window blows the wind of a memory, something someone said yesterday. Through another comes the light of a physical sensation, tiredness from a poor night's sleep. Through another drifts the scent of an emotion left over from a dream. On the loom itself are threads already in place: your habitual ways of thinking, your deep-seated beliefs, your genetic temperament. The silent weaver, awareness itself, doesn't control these inputs. But when that specific memory wind touches that specific thread of habit, under the light of that specific fatigue, a pattern begins to form on the loom. That pattern is your mood in this moment. That pattern is a thought. That pattern is a feeling of anxiety or peace. The anxiety did not come from nowhere. It was not a random demon visiting you. It was woven. It was a perfect, if painful, confluence of threads. Seeing this is the first step toward freedom from it. Because if something is woven, it can be unwoven. If it arose from specific conditions, it will change when those conditions change. The storm cloud of panic is not the permanent sky, it is a temporary weather pattern formed by pressure, temperature, and humidity. You can learn to read the weather map of your own being. Let me share a story from a different kind of loom, in the highlands of Guatemala. I once watched a master weaver, an older Mayan woman named Ixchel, create a complex hupal blouse. Her fingers flew, but her face was serene. I asked her how she kept the intricate pattern perfect. She smiled and said, "The pattern is not in my fingers. It is in the conversation. This red thread," she said, holding one up, "is angry today. It comes from a cochineal beetle that did not eat well. So I cannot force it to be bright. I must listen to it, and let the blue thread next to it, which is calm from a good indigo harvest, soften its story. The cloth is not me making something. It is me helping a conversation happen between the rain, the sun, the plants, the animals, and time." She was describing her craft as an exercise in dependent origination. The final beautiful piece was a dependent arising of countless non-human causes, and her skillful role was to arrange the conditions for their harmonious meeting. You are that conversation. Your personality is not a fixed statue. It is a living tapestry being woven in real time. The thread of your mother's tone of voice, the thread of a book that moved you at 16, the thread of the chemistry of the food you ate for breakfast, the thread of the political climate of your country, the thread of the ancestral trauma or resilience in your bloodline. You are the meeting place. And this is not a reduction of your majesty, it is an expansion of your context. You are not a lonely note, you are part of a symphony. This understanding shifts your power. You realize you may not control the wind through the windows, but you can learn to adjust the loom. You can't stop the memory wind from blowing, but you can choose which thread on the loom it touches. If it touches the old, brittle thread of, "I'm not good enough," a painful pattern will emerge. But if you have been diligently weaving a new, stronger thread of, "I am learning, I am capable," that same wind will create a different pattern, perhaps of resilience, perhaps of compassionate recall. A powerful modern echo of this comes from neuroplasticity, the science of how the brain changes itself. Every thought you think is a pathway in your brain. Think a thought once, it's a faint deer trail. Think it repeatedly, with emotional intensity, and you pave a 4-lane neurological highway. Your habitual threads are literal physical structures in your brain. The wonderful, liberating news is that you can pave new roads. By consciously, repeatedly directing your attention to wholesome thoughts, to gratitude, to compassion, you are not just thinking nice thoughts. You are doing the neural equivalent of Ixchel's weaving, you are spinning a new, stronger thread on your loom. You are physically altering the conditions of your mind. You are, quite literally, changing the weave of yourself. This is why mindfulness is not passive. It is the ultimate active participation. When you sit and feel your breath, you are doing two profound things. First, you are stepping back from the ever-forming patterns on the loom to simply be the space in which the loom sits. You are identifying with the aware room, not the changing cloth. Second, you are strengthening the thread of attention itself. You are making the thread of present moment awareness, the strongest one on the loom, so that when the winds of life blow, they are more likely to create patterns of clarity and calm, rather than reactivity and confusion. You are both the weaver and the woven. The artist and the art. And in every moment, you are participating in this creation. The next word you speak will be a wind through someone else's open window. The next intention you hold will be a new color added to your own tapestry. Nothing is insignificant. Every moment is a seed. And you are both the garden and the gardener. This can feel overwhelming, but it is ultimately a teaching of profound hope and agency. You are not stuck with a finished, flawed tapestry. The shuttle is in your hand, and the weaving is forever ongoing. The patterns of yesterday do not have to be the patterns of tomorrow. You can learn the craft of your own mind. Shall we go deeper into this craft, into how we work with the very threads of thought and intention? The next part of our journey looks at the most potent seed we plant, our conscious intention. Let's continue. Allow your eyes to close softly if they wish. Feel the gentle anchor of your breath. In and out. There's a deep intelligence in this simple rhythm, a wisdom that requires no thought. We're moving from seeing the woven tapestry of our experience to understanding the very hands that hold the shuttle. To the most potent force we wield in this world of cause and condition, our intention. We've come to perhaps the most misunderstood, and therefore most powerful, of all the natural laws, karma. It has been packaged as cosmic justice, a spiritual scoreboard of merits and demerits. We say, karma will get them, as if it's a divine punishment waiting in the wings. This turns a profound truth into a petty fantasy. What was discovered under the Bodhi tree was far more immediate, personal, and liberating. Karma is not fate. It is not judgment. The word simply means action. Specifically, volitional action, action springing from a conscious choice. The revolutionary insight is this: the essence of the action is not in the movement, but in the motivation that births it. The seed of the future is contained not in the deed itself, but in the quality of the soil from which it grows, the soil of your heart and mind in the moment of choice. Imagine two chefs preparing the same meal, a simple broth. The first chef chops the vegetables with distracted annoyance, thinking of an argument, his mind clouded with resentment. The second chef prepares the same ingredients with mindful care, infusing the action with a quiet wish for the nourishment of those who will eat. Scientifically, the broth may have identical nutrients. But something intangible is different. Anyone sensitive enough can taste it. The first broth might nourish the body but leave a subtle energetic residue. The second broth is healing on multiple levels. The external action, chopping, boiling, seasoning, is identical. The internal universe from which it arose is worlds apart. And that internal universe is what karma truly is. The intention is the unseen ingredient. It is the direction you point your energy. A donation given with a flourish, for social media praise, plants one kind of seed. The same amount given anonymously, with genuine empathy, plants another. The seed looks similar, but its genetic code, its intention, is completely different, and it will grow into a different kind of fruit in the garden of your character. I learned this not from a scripture, but from a potter's wheel in North Carolina. A teacher named Cora watched me struggle with a lump of clay, trying to force it into a perfect vase. It kept collapsing. Finally, she stilled my wheel. "You're fighting it," she said softly. "Your intention is control." The clay feels that. Its intention is to find its own center. You have to align your intention with its nature. Your hands should say, listen and support, not command. She placed her hands over mine, and we centered the clay together. It was a lesson in karma. My initial action, pushing, forcing, arose from the intention of control and came with the result of frustration and collapse. The corrected action, guiding, yielding, arose from the intention of harmony and resulted in a stable, centered form. The action of hands on clay was the same. The karmic seed was utterly transformed by the shift in intention. This is why the ancient teachers said the mind is the forerunner of all things. Before you speak a word, there is a forming intention in the mind, to connect, to defend, to hurt, to soothe. Before you take a step, there is an intention, to move toward, to move away. Karma is being created in the silent, private theater of your mind, long before the curtain rises on the external world. A moment of silent, sincere forgiveness you offer to someone in your thoughts, that is karma. It strengthens the neural pathways of compassion. A flash of jealousy you carefully nurture and feed with mental stories, that is karma. It deepens the riverbed of discontent. The battlefield of your life, and its most beautiful gardens, are first plotted and planted in the invisible landscape of intention. Modern psychology provides a fascinating parallel in the concept of internal narratives. The stories we tell ourselves about who we are and how the world works are not just background noise. They are active intentions that shape our perception and behavior. Someone with the internal narrative, "I am unlucky," will approach opportunities with the intention of spotting the catch, the flaw, and thus will often find it, reinforcing the narrative. This is karmic cycling in real time. Changing the internal narrative to, "I am capable of handling what comes," creates a new intention, one of openness and resilience, which then seeks and finds evidence for that truth. You are, through your conscious attention, rewriting the karmic code of your experience. Therefore, karma is not a life sentence from a distant past. It is the creative, sculpting power of the present moment. Yes, the seeds you planted yesterday are growing today. You are sitting in their shade, the habits of mind, the emotional reflexes, the circumstances that feel familiar. They are the existing conditions. But in this very breath, you are holding new seeds in the palm of your awareness. You are choosing, right now, the soil in which to plant them. Will it be the arid soil of resentment, or the fertile loam of curiosity? The past explains the landscape you're standing in, but it does not own the seeds in your hand for the next step of the journey. This is radically empowering. It means you are not a prisoner of your personality. That personality is just a well-worn path, a frequently chosen set of intentions that have become automatic. But at any point, you can step off the path. You can plant a new seed in a new direction. The first time you do it, it will feel strange, like breaking a habit. Because that's exactly what you're doing. You are creating a new karmic groove. Each time you choose a generous intention over a selfish one, a patient intention over a reactive one, you are not just being good. You are doing the precise, practical work of a gardener, tending the future harvest of your own peace. Your life is not something that is happening to you. It is something that is growing from you, from the quality of the seeds you plant in the soil of each moment. And the most important seed you can plant is the intention to pay attention. To see the soil for what it is, and to choose your seeds with care. This brings us to a natural, flowing question. If our experience is woven from causes, and shaped by our intentions, what is the nature of the material we are working with? What is the fundamental property of this tapestry, of this garden? The answer is the single most important truth to make peace with. Let's continue. Let your awareness settle like a leaf landing on a still pond. No effort is needed. Just a gentle allowing. We've seen how our world is woven from causes, and how our intentions are the hands that guide the shuttle. Now, we must look deeply at the nature of the thread itself. What is it made of? What is its most fundamental property? We arrive at the truth that is most obvious, most undeniable, and yet most fiercely resisted: impermanence. Anicca. Everything that arises will pass away. Everything that comes together will come apart. This is not a philosophical idea or a pessimistic observation. It is the foundational rhythm of existence. It is the deep, humming note at the center of the universe. Your body is changing as you listen. Your thoughts are arising and vanishing. The person you were a decade ago is a memory. The world outside your window is in constant flux. We are not solid beings living in a static world. We are currents of energy, patterns of information, temporary gatherings of stardust, dancing in a river of time. The problem is not that things change. The river must flow, that is its nature. The problem is that we keep trying to build a permanent house on the riverbank. We grasp at moments, at relationships, at states of mind, at versions of ourselves, and we whisper, "Stay. Be this forever." We fall in love with a particular configuration of the water and demand the river freeze. And when it doesn't, when it can't, we feel betrayed. We suffer. But the suffering isn't in the flowing. It's in our demand that the flowing stop. Imagine you are holding a perfect, glowing sphere of ice. It is exquisite, refracting light into rainbows. You love it. But your very hands, the warmth of your life, begin to melt it. You can feel it changing, becoming smaller, wetter. You have two choices. You can clutch it tighter in panic, which only accelerates the melting and cuts your skin on the cold. Or, you can hold it with open, grateful palms. You can admire its beauty fully, knowing its nature is to return to water. You can appreciate the cool sensation, the prism of light, the transient miracle of this particular form, even as you feel it dissolving. The first way is clinging, and it ends in pain and loss. The second way is love, and it ends in a clean, poignant gratitude for what was. The sphere of ice was always water, just passing through a temporary, beautiful shape. Let me tell you a story from the fjords of Norway. There was a man named Eric who spent 40 years carving a single, magnificent wooden sculpture of a seabird in flight for his village church. It was his life's work, filled with intricate detail. On the day he applied the final coat of oil, he invited the whole village. They marveled at it. That night, a faulty wire sparked, and the old wooden church burned to the ground. The sculpture was ash. The village was devastated for Eric. They found him the next morning, looking at the charred beams. He was calm. He said, "I am sad, yes. But I am not surprised. The wood always knew it could become fire. My joy was not in owning the bird, but in the conversation with the wood while it was here. The bird flew perfectly for one day. That is more than most of us get." Eric understood impermanence not as a thief, but as the very material of his art. The beauty was in the making, not just in the keeping. When you internalize this truth, not as a concept, but as a felt sense in your bones, it transforms everything. It doesn't make you care less, it makes you present more. That ordinary Tuesday with your coffee becomes precious, because you know this specific alignment of light, this particular piece, will never come again. You love people more deeply, not less, because you know your time with them is finite, and therefore sacred. You hold successes lightly, knowing they are weather patterns, not permanent climate change. You hold failures lightly, knowing they, too, are passing storms. This understanding becomes your greatest refuge in difficulty. When you are in the midst of pain, the thought, "This too shall pass," ceases to be a hollow platitude and becomes an anchor of truth. The pain is real, but it is not permanent. It is not the final definition of you. It is a chapter, and the pages keep turning. You are the sky, and this is a storm. Storms, by their very nature, do not last. There's a powerful practice from Stoic philosophy, an ancient Western tradition that stumbled upon similar truths, called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. It isn't about pessimism, but about visceral familiarity with impermanence. You consciously reflect. My health will change. My loved ones will die. This comfortable situation will alter. This is not to breed fear, but to dissolve the shock of change when it comes, and more importantly, to instill a fierce gratitude for what you have now. It's the mental equivalent of holding the ice sphere with open palms, fully feeling its temporary beauty. By making friends with impermanence, you rob it of its power to terrify you. In your own life, you can practice this with small things. The next time you have a perfect, quiet moment, sunlight on the floor, the taste of a ripe piece of fruit, pause. Instead of trying to mentally capture it or lament its passing, simply say to yourself, "This is already passing. Thank you." Feel the sweet sorrow and the profound gratitude intertwined. This is the taste of freedom. You are not trying to nail the moment to the wall. You are letting it sing its brief, beautiful song, and you are truly listening. This truth also answers a deep, anxious question about the self. If everything is impermanent, what about the me that is experiencing all this? What is this sense of a permanent, continuous I that seems to be watching the river flow? This brings us to the deepest, and most liberating, insight of all. But before we go there, we must understand the mechanism of our own bondage. If impermanence is the river, what is it that keeps us chained to the bank, desperately trying to stop the water? The answer lies in a powerful, invisible force that shapes almost every moment of our lives. It's time to look at the energy of grasping itself. Let's continue. Settle back into the quiet space of listening. Feel the air on your skin. Notice the subtle, ever-changing dance of sensations. We've seen the river of impermanence. Now, we must look at the hands that are desperately trying to cup the water, to hold it still. This is the energy of craving. Tanha. It is often translated as thirst, and that is perfect. It is a deep, driving sense that something is missing, that if only we could get that object, that state, that recognition, then we could finally rest. Craving is not simple wanting. Wanting is natural. You want water when you're thirsty. You want connection when you're lonely. Craving is the extra layer. It is the belief that your peace, your wholeness, your very sense of okayness is out there, in the future, contingent upon getting what you lack or holding on to what you have. It is the mental leaning away from the reality of this moment, toward an imagined, better one. The awakened mind described 3 streams of this thirst. First, craving for sensory pleasure. The pull toward anything that feels good. The next bite of food, the next purchase, the next compliment, the next thrilling experience. There's nothing wrong with pleasure. But craving turns pleasure into a drug. You get the hit, and for a moment, the thirst is satisfied. But the effect fades, and the thirst returns, often stronger, now seeking a new source. It's like drinking salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. Second, craving for existence and becoming. This is the drive to be someone. To build and solidify an identity. I am a successful person, a spiritual person, a loved person, a knowledgeable person. We post on social media not just to share, but to become, to have our chosen identity validated and reinforced. We argue to be right, not for truth, but to fortify the walls of our self-concept. This craving is based on a deep fear, that without these accomplishments and labels, we would be nobody, we would cease to matter. So we hustle for our worth, forever building a sandcastle against the tide of impermanence. Third, and most subtle, craving for non-existence. This is the desire to escape, to make unpleasant experiences disappear. The moment we feel boredom, anxiety, sadness, or physical discomfort, we reach for the phone, the snack, the distraction. We say, "I just want this feeling to stop." This is the craving to annihilate a part of our present experience. We want the me that is feeling this to not be. But what we resist, persists. The effort to push something away gives it a shadowy power over us. All three have one thing in common: they are forms of resistance to what is. They are a rebellion against the present moment, which is always, inevitably, a mix of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral sensations flowing through the field of awareness. Let me share an original story from the markets of Marrakesh. A master rug merchant, Ahmed, watched a tourist haggle ferociously over a beautiful Berber carpet. The tourist was fixated, possessed by the idea of getting it for a winning price. His face was tense, his enjoyment of the rug's beauty completely lost. Finally, he secured his price, paid, and walked away with the rolled carpet. He looked not joyful, but exhausted. Ahmed sighed and said to his apprentice, "He came for the rug, but he bought the fight. He paid with his peace. Now he owns a rug that will remind him of struggle, not beauty." The thirst to win poisoned the well. The tourist's craving for the pleasurable victory, craving for becoming the savvy negotiator, completely obscured the actual, beautiful object and poisoned the experience of acquiring it. This happens to us constantly in subtler ways. We crave a peaceful vacation, but spend the entire time craving perfect photos to prove we had it, thus missing the peace. We crave a loving relationship, but spend our time craving reassurance that we are loved, thus smothering the love that is there. The craving itself becomes a barrier to the very thing we crave. Modern neuroscience shows us that craving has a specific neural signature. Brain scans reveal that the anticipation of a reward, the craving phase, often produces a stronger dopamine surge than the reward itself. We are, in a sense, wired to be more excited by the chase than the catch. This is the mechanism of the saltwater thirst. The brain's reward system lights up for maybe, leaving the finally feeling flat. Understanding this biologically helps us depersonalize craving. It's not a moral failing, it's a tricky feature of our inherited hardware. Our practice is to install a new software of awareness to work with it skillfully. So, what is the alternative? It is not to become a stone, devoid of preference. It is to replace craving with aspiration. Craving says, "I need that to be happy." Aspiration says, "It would be beautiful if this happened, and I will work toward it, but my well-being is not held hostage by the outcome." Craving is a closed fist, terrified of losing what it holds. Aspiration is an open hand, ready to both give and receive, unattached to either. The practice is to become a connoisseur of your own craving. To catch it in the act. To feel the physical tension of leaning forward, the mental narrowness of fixation. And in that seeing, to simply say, "Ah. This is craving." You don't need to judge it or obey it. Just name it. See it as a conditioned energy that has arisen, like a gust of wind. This recognition creates a space. In that space, you have a choice. You can still act, but now you act from choice, not compulsion. You might still buy the rug, but you do it with enjoyment, not with a frantic need to conquer. Your freedom lies not in satisfying every craving, but in breaking the hypnotic spell that craving casts. You realize that the peace you've been seeking out there was never in the object of the craving. It was always in the space of awareness that exists before the craving arises. It is the deep, still water beneath the choppy waves of wanting and avoiding. When we see clearly how craving binds us, we naturally arrive at a crossroads. We see the exhausting cycle of reaching and grasping. This brings us to the practical path out of the thicket. It's time to talk about the way of balance, the path that walks directly between the extremes of indulgence and denial. Let's continue. Bring your attention gently to the feeling of your body resting. There's a deep intelligence in this rest, a knowing that needs no thought. We've felt the river of change and seen the thirsty hands trying to grasp it. Now, we come to the practical path. If grasping and pushing away cause suffering, how do we actually live? What is the alternative to swinging between the extremes of chasing pleasure and punishing ourselves? The answer is the middle way. It is not a compromise, not a lukewarm average between hot and cold. It is a radical third option, a way of being that is fully engaged yet fundamentally free. Before his awakening, the seeker Siddhartha tried both extremes. In the palace, he pursued every pleasure, believing satisfaction was in getting what you want. He found only numbness, a kind of spiritual indigestion. In the forest, he practiced fierce self-denial, believing freedom was in rejecting what you want. He found only exhaustion, a withering of his humanity. He realized both were forms of violence, one against reality through indulgence, the other against the self through deprivation. The true path, he discovered, was like tuning a lute. The string must be taut enough to sing, but not so tight it snaps. That perfect tension is the middle way. Think of a master potter at her wheel. Her hands are in constant, fluid contact with the spinning clay. If she presses too hard, too forcefully, she deforms the vessel. If her touch is too timid, too loose, the clay loses its center and collapses into formlessness. Her touch is neither forceful nor absent. It is present, responsive, and precisely attuned. She feels the clay's resistance and its willingness, and she adjusts her pressure in a seamless dialogue. The middle way is that quality of touch applied to your entire life. It is meeting each moment, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, with a touch that is engaged but not controlling, receptive but not passive. Let me tell you an original story from the Australian outback. An Aboriginal elder was teaching a young man how to track animals. The young man would either crash through the brush, scaring everything away, or he would sit so still and rigid he'd miss all the subtle signs. The elder finally said, "You are either a storm or a stone. You must become the wind. The wind moves. It goes around the thick brush. It feels the contours of the land. It is never still, but it never fights. It is present with everything it touches, but it leaves no scar. The young man needed to find the middle way between aggressive action and paralyzed inaction. He needed to become the wind, present, intelligent, and responsive. In your own life, the middle way shows up everywhere. In your relationship with food, it is neither gluttony nor starvation, but mindful nourishment. You eat with enjoyment and stop when satisfied. In your work, it is neither frantic obsession nor lazy avoidance, but engaged flow. You give your full attention to the task, then you rest fully. In your relationships, it is neither clinging possessiveness nor cold detachment, but loving connection. You care deeply without demanding the other person be the source of your happiness. This requires a faculty the ancient Greeks called phronesis, practical wisdom, or discernment. It's knowing when to act and when to accept. When to speak and when to be silent. When to grasp an opportunity and when to let it pass. This wisdom doesn't come from a rulebook. It comes from a mind that is calm, clear, and intimately familiar with the present moment. A mind that has stepped out of the reactive cycle of craving and aversion. Modern psychology frames a similar idea in the concept of the window of tolerance. This is the optimal zone of arousal where we can process information, handle emotions, and respond effectively. When we are triggered, we can be thrust above the window into hyperarousal, anxiety, rage, the storm, or dropped below it into hypoarousal, numbness, dissociation, the stone. The work of emotional regulation is to gently bring ourselves back into the window, the middle way of the nervous system. Breathing, grounding, mindful awareness, these are the tools that restore that balanced, responsive state where wise action is possible. The middle way is also the heart of true meditation practice. If you try to force your mind to be empty, you create tension and resistance. If you offer no guidance at all, you drift into sleep or distraction. The practice is the gentle, persistent return of attention, not with the grip of a jailer, but with the kindness of a parent calling a wandering child back home. It is effort without strain. It is the balanced tension of the well-tuned string. So how do we cultivate this? We start with small things. The next time you feel a strong urge, for another snack, to check your phone, to fire off an angry email, pause. Create a half-breath of space. In that space, ask, is this action coming from a place of balance, or from a place of craving or aversion? You don't have to judge the answer. Just look. That simple pause is you stepping onto the middle path. That tiny gap is where your freedom grows. Walking this path leads to a profound sense of ease. Life becomes less of a battle to be won or a problem to be solved, and more of a landscape to be explored with curiosity and care. You begin to trust your ability to meet what comes, not because you can control it, but because you have learned how to dance with it. But to dance skillfully, we must know the ground we're dancing on. We must understand the patterns of the music that so often seems to sweep us away. This brings us to look at the cycles we find ourselves in, the familiar ruts that make life feel like a repeating dream. Let's continue. Let your awareness rest in the quiet space between thoughts. That space is always here, like the sky behind the clouds. We've found the balanced path. Now, we must shine a light on why we so often stray from it, why we find ourselves walking the same painful circles in our lives. This is the understanding of samsara. Often thought of as a cosmic cycle of rebirth, samsara's most immediate and practical meaning is the cycle of habitual patterns right here in this life, in this moment. It's the feeling of being stuck in a loop. The same argument with a partner, with different words. The same self-sabotaging behavior when success nears. The same critical thought about yourself, replaying like a broken record. You know it causes suffering, yet you feel powerless to step off the track. That is samsara in action. The wheel of becoming, spinning from habit. Imagine walking through a fresh field of deep snow to get to a beautiful vista. You take a direct but difficult route, breaking the trail yourself. The next day, you need to go again. Without thinking, you step into your own footprints from yesterday. It's easier. The third day, the path is even more defined. After a week, it's a hard-packed trench. Soon, you're walking that same trench every day, without looking up. The vista is forgotten. The trench becomes your entire world. You don't even remember you chose it. That trench is a samsaric pattern. Your reactive anger, your anxiety spiral, your people-pleasing, these are neural and behavioral trenches worn deep by repetition. The wheel is turned by three forces, often depicted as animals at its center: a pig, a snake, and a rooster. The pig represents ignorance, not seeing the trench for what it is. We walk the path on autopilot, unaware we are even in a cycle. The snake represents aversion, our hissing reaction to push away what's unpleasant, which only deepens the trench of avoidance. The rooster represents craving, the constant pecking, grasping for what we think will make us feel better, digging the trench of desire. Ignorance, aversion, craving. This trio keeps us marching in the familiar, painful circle. Let me share an original story from the ancient cedar forests of British Columbia. A conservation officer tracked a lone wolf who had developed a strange, destructive pattern. The wolf would enter a remote campground, not for food, but to systematically tear apart backpacking tents. It was bizarre, purposeless behavior. The officer eventually pieced together the story. Years prior, as a young pup, this wolf had been accidentally trapped in a tent by a frightened hiker. It was a terrifying struggle. The wolf escaped, but the trauma wired its brain. Now, as an adult, the scent of synthetic canvas triggered a blind, reactive loop of panic and attack. The wolf wasn't being bad. It was trapped in a samsaric cycle of trauma response, replaying a past threat in a present that was no longer dangerous. Its ignorance, not seeing the present context, its aversion to the fear, and its craving for the fear to stop, kept it in a prison of its own neural pathways. We are not so different. Our tents are old wounds, perceived threats, and outdated beliefs. A critical parent's voice becomes the internal trench of, "I'm not good enough." A past betrayal becomes the trench of distrust. We smell the canvas of a similar situation, and we are back in the old terror, reacting not to what is, but to the ghost of what was. The Buddha described this as a 12-link chain, a sequence of cause and effect that perpetuates suffering. It begins with ignorance of how things truly are, which leads to the formation of habitual patterns, sankharas, which shape our consciousness, which shapes our perception, and so on, through feeling, craving, grasping, and back to suffering. It sounds complex, but you can feel it. It's the domino effect that starts with one unexamined thought and ends in a full-blown emotional crisis. The good news, the liberating news, is this: the chain can be broken at any link. The moment you become aware of the pattern, you have already introduced a new element. Awareness is the light that reveals the trench. You look down and say, "Ah, I am in the trench again." That simple recognition is the beginning of the end of the cycle. You are no longer blindly walking, you are seeing the path. And in that seeing, choice becomes possible. This is where mindfulness becomes your tool of liberation. It is the process of walking through the snow while staying awake. You notice when your foot is about to fall into the old footprint. In that noticing, you can choose, just slightly, to place your foot to the left or the right. You won't always succeed. The old groove is deep. But each conscious step begins to pack down a new path. Neurologically, this is self-directed neuroplasticity. You are using the power of your focused attention to weaken the old, painful neural trench, through not reinforcing it. And to blaze a new, more skillful trail, by practicing a new response. Your practice is to become a cartographer of your own cycles. Without judgment, just map them. When X happens, I typically feel Y, and then I do Z. See the links. The act of mapping itself creates distance. You are no longer the lost traveler, you are the one holding the map. The territory is still challenging, but you are no longer bewildered. Breaking these cycles doesn't mean you'll never feel anger or fear again. It means those energies will no longer have the power to kidnap you and force you down the same old road. They become whether you observe, not a destiny you are compelled to live out. As we weaken these old, binding cycles, we create space for something new to emerge. We move from being prisoners of pattern to conscious participants in creation. This brings us to the most intimate frontier of our exploration. The very sense of the one who is walking, choosing, and experiencing. What is this self that feels so solid at the center of it all? Let's continue. Allow your body to be completely supported. Let go of any need to hold yourself up. Feel the gravitational pull of the earth, a constant, gentle embrace. We've mapped the cycles that trap us. Now, we must inquire into the very center of the maze, the one who feels trapped. The sense of a permanent, separate, solid me. This is the exploration of anatta, often translated as non-self. This is not a nihilistic claim that you don't exist. You clearly exist. You are reading, feeling, thinking. The teaching of anatta is far more subtle and liberating. It is an invitation to investigate. What exactly are you referring to when you say, I? Is it a fixed thing, or a flowing process? Is it the thinker of thoughts, or are you the awareness in which thinking arises? Imagine you are listening to a symphony. You can point to the violins, the cellos, the flutes. But can you point to the symphony as a separate object? The symphony is not a thing. It is an event. It is a beautiful, temporary, interdependent arising of sounds, musicians, composition, and acoustics. If you removed any element, the symphony would cease. It has no independent, permanent essence. It is a verb pretending to be a noun. The sense of I is much the same. It is not a solid entity behind your eyes. It is a dynamic, ever-changing process, a symphony of body, sensations, perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness, all playing together. We take this flowing symphony and, out of habit and fear, freeze-frame it into a snapshot called me. Let me tell you an original story from the Pacific Ocean, near the equator. A sailor on a long solo voyage began to hear a voice in the engine room of his small boat. It was a low, rhythmic, metallic voice. At first, it sounded like words, "You are alone. You will fail." It filled him with dread. For days, he was tormented by this seemingly sentient, malevolent presence in his boat. Finally, in desperation, he dismantled the compartment around the engine. He found no ghost, no demon. He found a loose bracket. The regular rocking of the boat caused the metal to tap against a pipe in a specific rhythm that, filtered through the hull and the chamber, and shaped by his own lonely, fearful mind, coalesced into the illusion of a voice. The moment he saw the cause, the bracket, the pipe, the motion, his interpretation, the separate, threatening other vanished. There was just the boat, the sea, and the conditions. His self as the victim of a phantom was an illusion created by interdependent parts. He fixed the bracket, and the voice was gone. We do this constantly. We take a cluster of sensations, tight chest, a perception, I'm under attack, a thought, this is unfair, and a feeling of fear, and we weave them together into a solid entity, the anxious me. We then spend our life running from or fighting this phantom, this loose bracket we've mistaken for a demon. Anatta is the investigative process of dismantling the compartment to see the actual, impersonal conditions at play. Science offers a compelling parallel. Your body replaces nearly every atom within it every 7 to 10 years. The cells in your stomach lining renew every few days. Your skin cells every month. The very material, you, is in constant flux. What you call your memory is not a fixed film reel but a dynamic, reconstructive process. Each time you remember, you subtly rewrite the memory. There is no permanent, unchanging hardware for a permanent self to reside in. You are a pattern, a process, a flame being passed from one candlewick to the next, maintaining the appearance of continuity while being entirely new at every moment. This investigation is not meant to be frightening. It is the ultimate liberation from a profound burden, the burden of having to protect, defend, and constantly reinforce a fragile fiction. When you see that the angry me is just anger arising in the field of awareness, you no longer have to be its general or its slave. You can relate to it. When you see that the inadequate me is just a thought pattern, a groove in the snow, you are free to step out of it. The practice is simple but profound. In meditation, or in daily life, when a strong sense of I arises, I am bored, I am brilliant, I am hurt, add the question, is that true, and then look. Look for the bored one. Can you find it, or do you just find the sensation of restlessness and the thought, this is boring? Look for the hurt one. Can you find it, or do you find a pang in the heart, a memory, and a story of betrayal? You won't find a CEO in a little control room behind your eyes. You'll find a parliament of processes, a committee of conditions, voting on what to feel next. You are not the committee. You are the spacious chamber in which the committee meets. Releasing the illusion of a separate, solid self does not lead to passivity. It leads to a more fluid, compassionate, and effective engagement with life. You are no longer a brittle statue that can be knocked over. You become like water, shaping yourself to the situation, finding a way around obstacles, nourishing without demanding credit. Your actions become less about defending your self-image and more about responding to what is needed. And from this place of fluid, less self-centered being, a natural and powerful quality begins to emanate. It is the understanding that your freedom is inextricably linked to the freedom of all other flowing, temporary symphonies of life. This brings us to the beautiful, inevitable flowering of the heart. Let's continue. Let your heart center soften. Imagine a gentle warmth radiating from your chest. No need to force it, just allow. We've loosened the knot of a separate self, seeing ourselves as part of a vast, flowing process. From this understanding, something beautiful and inevitable arises. When the walls of me become more porous, what flows in is the reality of you. This is the natural emergence of compassion and loving kindness, karuna and metta. It is not a commandment to be nice. It is the direct, visceral understanding of interconnectedness becoming a feeling, and that feeling becoming an action. Compassion is not pity. Pity says, "You poor thing, over there, separate from me." Compassion, from its Latin roots, means to suffer with. It is the recognition, your pain is not alien to me. The conditions for that pain live in me, too. When you see through the lens of dependent origination, you understand that the angry person is caught in a web of causes, their pain, their history, their ignorance, just as you can be. The anxious person is lost in a weather pattern of their own mind, just as you can be. The boundary between my suffering and your suffering begins to blur. It's all just suffering, arising in different places due to different conditions. This understanding softens the heart. It replaces judgment with curiosity, and hatred with a desire for the other's freedom from the very traps you yourself wish to be free from. Imagine two adjacent gardens, separated by a tall hedge. The gardener in the east plot only tends his own plants, cursing the weeds that blow in from the west. The gardener in the west does the same. They are in a constant, wearying battle. Then, a storm knocks down a section of the hedge. For the first time, each gardener can see the other's plot clearly. The eastern gardener sees that the invasive weeds from the west are actually desperate seedlings from a beautiful, choked-out mother plant in the neglected western garden. The western gardener sees that the stolen sunlight is just the natural growth of a healthy tree in the east. Their war was based on a fiction of separation. The moment the hedge fell, compassion became possible. Not a sentimental feeling, but a practical understanding, our gardens are interconnected. To truly tend my own, I must understand the conditions of yours. The wise action is no longer to build the hedge higher, but to perhaps help the western gardener clear the chokehold around her mother plant, benefiting both gardens. Let me share an original story from the streets of modern-day Seoul. A young finance worker, Min Jun, was perpetually infuriated by a seemingly homeless old man who sat every day in his spot near the subway exit, sometimes muttering, sometimes staring blankly. Min-jun's aversion was a daily ritual. One brutally cold afternoon, rushing past, he saw a city worker trying to move the old man along. The old man was shivering, confused, clutching a tattered bag. In that moment, Min-jun didn't see a nuisance. He saw a human body, cold. He saw confusion, not malice. The hedge of his judgment fell. Without overthinking, he walked into a nearby convenience store, bought a hot can of coffee and a warm rice triangle, and brought it to the man. He didn't say a word, just placed it beside him and walked on. He didn't do it to be a hero. He did it because in that moment of clear seeing, it was the most natural, obvious response. The man's suffering was no longer an abstract problem, it was a cold body, and he had the means to provide a moment of warmth. That is compassion in action, wisdom manifesting as care. This is supported by fascinating science. Studies using fMRI scans show that compassion meditation increases activity in brain networks linked to empathy, positive emotion, and reward. It also dampens activity in the amygdala, the fear center. Practicing compassion literally rewires your brain to be more resilient to suffering, your own and others. It's not just being good. It's a form of mental and emotional training that increases your capacity for well-being. Furthermore, the helper's high, that warm, expansive feeling after an act of kindness, is linked to the release of oxytocin and endorphins. Compassion is biologically beneficial, it's part of our evolutionary design for social survival and thriving. The practice of metta, or loving kindness, is the systematic training of this heart muscle. You start by offering wishes for well-being to yourself. May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I live with ease. This is crucial, for you cannot draw water from an empty well. Then you extend it to a benefactor, a neutral person, a difficult person, and finally to all beings everywhere. You are not forcing love. You are using the phrases to soften the heart, to dissolve the mental hedges of separation, and to align your intention with the deepest truth of interconnection. You are watering the seeds of your natural, inherent capacity for care. From this compassionate ground, action arises not as a burden of should, but as the natural flowering of understanding. You speak with care because you see how words land. You act with integrity because you see how actions ripple. You forgive not because what happened was okay, but because you see the other person as also being trapped in a cycle of cause and effect, and you wish for your own freedom from the prison of resentment. The heart, when unburdened by the solid self, knows what to do. It is wired for connection. Our path culminates not in a sterile detachment, but in a rich, engaged, and compassionate participation in the web of life. But to sustain this participation, to walk this path steadily, we need support. We need guides and fellow travelers. We need community. Let's continue. Place a hand gently on your heart. Feel the steady rhythm beneath your palm. This is the engine room of connection, the physical drum that beats the same basic rhythm in every human chest. We've explored the spacious awareness that sees beyond separation. Now, let's allow that seeing to sink from the head down into the heart, to become a felt sense of kinship. This is where wisdom blooms into compassion, not as a spiritual obligation, but as the most natural response to understanding how life is woven together. True compassion is intelligent. It is the heart's understanding of cause and effect. When you see someone acting from anger, you might still feel the heat of their words, but beneath that, a quieter knowing can arise: this person is in pain. This anger is their symptom, not their essence. They are trapped in a cycle I too know well. This doesn't mean you excuse harmful behavior. It means you see it clearly, and from that clear seeing, your response can be more skillful. You build a boundary not from hatred, but from wisdom. Like a doctor setting a bone, firm but not cruel, because they understand the mechanism of healing. Let me share an original story from the Appalachian Hills. An elderly woman named Granny May was known for her healing salves and gentle wisdom. A furious young man once stormed up to her cabin, blaming her for a poultice that didn't fix his brother's deep infection. He shouted, waving his arms. Granny May listened, her hands still sorting herbs. When he finished, breathless, she said softly, "Your anger is a fire, son. It's burning you up to keep your fear warm." He stared. She continued, "The salve couldn't reach the poison already in the blood. That needs a doctor's medicine. My salve was for the wound at the surface. You're mad at the messenger, 'cause you're scared of the news. That's a natural fire. But let's tend to your brother now, instead of feeding this one." Her compassion wasn't softness. It was diagnostic. She saw the cause of his rage, fear for his brother, and the condition of his misunderstanding. She addressed the root, not the spark. His anger, met with this kind of perceiving understanding, had nowhere to go but to dissolve into the worry from which it came. That is compassion as a clarifying force. Modern research in conflict resolution and restorative justice shows this principle in action. When victims and offenders meet in facilitated dialogues, the healing moment often comes not with an apology first, but with the victim's genuine curiosity. What were you thinking that night? What was your life like then? This is an attempt to see the causes and conditions. When the offender begins to describe their own pain, addiction, or desperation, the victim often sees a human being caught in a web, not a monster. This doesn't erase the crime, but it transforms the relationship to it. Compassion, in this light, is the ultimate conflict resolution tool. It seeks to understand the causal chain, which is the first step toward genuinely breaking it. Your practice is to cultivate this tender ground within. The formal practice of metta or loving-kindness meditation is the irrigation system for this ground. You begin by offering wishes of well-being to yourself. This is fundamental. You cannot offer genuine kindness from a reservoir of self-loathing. May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I live with ease. You then extend these same sincere wishes to a friend, to a neutral person, to a difficult person, and finally to all beings. You are not pretending to feel warm fuzzies for someone who hurt you. You are practicing the intention for their freedom from suffering. You are aligning your will with the deepest truth of interconnection. You are watering the seed of your innate capacity for care, which has been covered by the weeds of personal grievance. As this ground within becomes more tender and fertile, your actions begin to organically change. You listen more deeply, because you're curious about the story behind the words. You speak more carefully, because you feel the impact of words as stones dropped in the shared lake of your relationships. You find patience not because you're a saint, but because you see the other person as a fellow traveler, wrestling with their own unseen burdens. Compassion becomes your default lens, and from that lens, the world, though still filled with pain, becomes a place of shared healing rather than isolated battle. This connected, compassionate heart is the strongest foundation for the next phase of the journey. It gives us the resilience and warmth needed to confront a universal, yet deeply personal, experience on the path, the moment when everything you've built seems to fall apart, when the map dissolves, and you are left in the dark. This is not a mistake. It is a sacred threshold. Let's continue. There is a deep courage in simply sitting with uncertainty. Notice if there's any part of you trying to figure this out, and gently invite it to rest. We've built a foundation of understanding and cultivated a compassionate heart. Yet, for every sincere traveler, there comes a season where the path itself seems to vanish. The practices that once brought peace feel dry and mechanical. Old wounds resurface with a new intensity. The sense of "I" you work to soften may suddenly feel more brittle and afraid than ever. This is not failure. In the deep ecology of the spirit, this is the necessary darkness. It is the forest floor decomposing so that new growth can emerge. In Zen, they call it daikofu, the great struggle, or the great ball of doubt. Before his awakening, the Buddha-to-be experienced this profoundly. He had mastered the highest states of meditation, achieved profound tranquility, and yet, a core unsatisfactoriness remained. He sat by the river, emaciated from extreme asceticism, and realized all his efforts had not yielded the freedom he sought. In that moment of total, humble not knowing, the seeking mind collapsed. And it was in that fertile space of collapse that true seeing could be born. Your dark night is not a sign you are doing it wrong. It is often a sign you are doing it deeply enough that old structures must break. Think of a caterpillar in its chrysalis. From the outside, it appears dormant, even dead. But inside, a process of radical dissolution is underway. The caterpillar's very cells break down into a kind of organic soup, a state of pure potential. Only from this state of no form can the imaginal cells begin to build the wings of the butterfly. If you were to cut open the chrysalis too early, you would find only liquid, no butterfly. The darkness and the dissolution are not the enemy of transformation, they are its prerequisite. Your period of doubt, grief, or feeling utterly lost is your psychic and spiritual form returning to soup. It is uncomfortable, terrifying, and utterly essential. Let me share an original story from the history of astronomy. In the early 20th century, the physicist Arthur Eddington led an expedition to observe a solar eclipse. His goal was to test Einstein's radical new theory of relativity, which predicted that starlight would bend around the sun. To do this, he had to compare the apparent position of stars near the eclipsed sun to their known position in the night sky. But to see those stars, he had to wait for the moon to completely blot out the sun's overwhelming light. For those few minutes of total darkness, the hidden stars became visible. His profound discovery was only possible in the deliberate, waiting darkness. Your dark night is your eclipse. The familiar, blinding light of your old identity, your old certainties, and your spiritual achievements is temporarily blocked. And in that holy darkness, previously invisible truths, the fixed stars of your deepest nature, can finally be seen. This is why we must learn to surrender to the process, not just the practice. We are conditioned to want progress, light, and insight. We want the butterfly, not the soup. But wisdom asks us to develop a humble trust in the intelligence of dissolution. To stop trying to reassemble the caterpillar when the universe is trying to make you a butterfly. In this space, all you can do is practice the fundamentals with radical simplicity and profound self-compassion. Return to the breath, not for profound insight, but simply because it is an anchor in the storm. Practice metta for yourself, because the part of you that is dissolving is scared and needs kindness. Walk in nature and feel the ground under your feet. Do the next right, small, wholesome thing. The mind will scream that you are regressing. The heart knows you are in a sacred liminal space. This phase asks for one thing above all, the courage not to abort the process. Not to reach for an old addiction, a new spiritual fad, or a desperate relationship to numb the uncertainty. It asks you to be like the sailor in a fog bank, who stops the engine, drops anchor, and simply waits, listening for the buoy bell, trusting that the shoreline, though unseen, is still there. When you can sit in this darkness without fleeing, something imperceptible shifts. The dissolution completes its work. The soup of your old self begins to coalesce around a new center of gravity. Not a better version of the old you, but something less constructed, more authentic, and fundamentally free. You are ready for a truth that can only be realized, not learned. Let's continue. Rest into a sense of profound allowing. Let go of even the need to understand. We've passed through the dissolving dark. Now, in the stillness that follows, a new kind of perception can dawn. It is the direct seeing of emptiness, sunyata, and suchness, tathata. These are not bleak, nihilistic concepts. They are the most liberating and beautiful insights into the nature of reality. Emptiness does not mean nothingness. It means empty of independent, permanent existence. Everything is empty of a separate self. A cup is empty of cupness. It is a temporary coming together of silica, heat, design, and function. The cup is full of its causes, but empty of a permanent, isolated identity. Suchness is the flip side of the same coin. It is seeing things exactly as they are, in their suchness, freed from the labels, judgments, and stories we project onto them. It is perceiving the anger as a pure energy of vibration and heat, before you call it, my anger. It is seeing the tree as a miraculous interplay of photosynthesis, cellular structure, and sunlight, before you label it oak or beautiful. When you see the emptiness of things, their interdependent, fluid nature, you simultaneously see their radiant suchness. Their perfect, thusness in this moment. Imagine you are watching a majestic thunderstorm over open plains. You see the clouds, empty of solidity, full of water vapor and wind, the lightning, empty of permanence, a flash of electrical potential, the rain, empty of individuality, each drop part of the whole. You don't call the lightning good or bad. You don't beg the clouds to stay. You behold the suchness of the storm, its awesome, impersonal, powerful expression of natural laws. You feel awe, not personal offense or attachment. Now, imagine applying that same perception to the storm of your own grief, or the lightning flash of your joy. To see them as natural, empty phenomena arising and passing within the vast sky of awareness. This is freedom. Let me share an original story from the Arctic Circle, from an Inuit elder. A young hunter was distraught after a failed hunt, blaming the weather, the ice, his own skill. The elder listened and then pointed to the sky, where the aurora borealis was beginning to shimmer. "You see the spirit lights?" he asked. "They are not a thing you can catch. They are not a solid curtain. They are a dance between the sun's wind and our sky. Your hunt was the same. It was not a solid thing, success or failure. It was a dance between the seal, the ice, the wind, your skill, and chance. You are trying to grab the aurora in your hand and call it yours. You can only ever witness the dance." He was pointing to emptiness. The hunt had no solid essence of success or failure, and suchness, it was a unique, transient dance of conditions. When the hunter saw this, his crushing disappointment dissolved into a clean, observant respect for the complex dance he had participated in. In your own experience, you can touch this. Sit quietly and listen to a sound, perhaps a distant siren or a bird. For a few seconds, try not to name it. Don't call it siren or bird. Don't judge it as pleasant or annoying. Just experience the raw sensation of vibrating air waves meeting your eardrum. Experience the suchness of that sound. In that gap between sensation and label, you taste emptiness. You see the sound as an event, not a fixed thing. You are free from your habitual reaction to it. This realization is the ultimate peace treaty with reality. You stop arguing with what is, because you see what is as a fleeting, dependently arisen pattern, not a solid truth to defeat. Pain, when seen as empty, as a constellation of sensation, resistance, and story, loses its solid, terrifying identity. It becomes a pattern to be met with curiosity, not a predator to be feared. This is not dissociation. It is hyperpresence, meeting the bare experience before the mind wraps it in drama. From this unshakable ground of emptiness and suchness, life is no longer a problem to be solved. It is a mysterious, unfolding expression to be participated in with wonder and care. Your actions become spontaneous, appropriate, and compassionate because they arise from clear seeing, not from the tangled needs of a fictional self. You are finally ready to live the truth of your interconnectedness not as a philosophy, but as your lived, moment-to-moment reality. This brings us to the most practical of all arts: how to integrate this seeing into the messy, beautiful, and demanding theater of everyday life, into our work, our relationships, and our very sense of purpose. Let's continue. Feel the weight of your body in the chair, the texture of your clothes on your skin. This is the field of practice. Not the cushion alone, but here, in the ordinary. We've touched profound seeing. Now, we must learn the gentle, resilient art of integration. How does emptiness walk to the grocery store? How does compassion answer a rude email? How does impermanence meet a deadline? Integration is the process of letting wisdom seep from your meditation seat into your muscles, your speech, your daily choices. It is becoming a living bridge between insight and action. This is where the path becomes an embodied craft. You are not trying to be spiritual in a removed way. You are learning to be fully, skillfully human. Think of a master blacksmith. They understand the theory of heat and metal, but their wisdom lives in their hands, in the precise strike of the hammer, in the intuition of when to quench the steel. Your daily life is your forge. Each interaction, each task, each moment of quiet is the hot metal. Your mindfulness is the hammer. Your compassionate intention is the anvil. You are shaping a life of integrity. Integration happens in the micro moments. It's the half-second pause before you react. It's choosing to feel the frustration of traffic as sensations in the body, rather than fueling a story about idiots and wasted time. It's listening to a coworker not just to reply, but to truly understand the need beneath their words. It's doing the dishes with full attention to the warmth of the water and the shine of the plate, making a chore a small ceremony of presence. Each of these is a stitch weaving the cloak of wisdom around your daily existence. Let me share an original story from a modern context, a busy hospital oncology ward. A nurse named Lena was renowned for her calm. One day, a new intern, overwhelmed and cynical, asked her secret. "How are you not crushed by this?" he asked. Lena finished charting and said, "Come with me." She led him to a patient's room, an elderly man struggling to eat soup. She didn't just take the spoon. She sat, made eye contact, and said, "The broth smells good today, Mr. Jacobs." She helped him lift the spoon, her movements slow and steady, fully present for that single sip. Back in the hall, she said to the intern, "I don't do oncology nursing. I do this. I meet this person, in this need, in this moment. That's all there ever is. When I clock out, that moment is done. I don't carry the ward home, I carried my whole presence here." Lena had integrated impermanence, each moment is complete, and compassion, meeting the specific need before her. She wasn't battling the abstract giant of cancer, she was engaged in the tangible art of care, one sip, one moment at a time. That is integrated practice. Your own integration can be structured through what I call Dharma anchors. These are simple, specific reminders planted in your routine. The morning anchor: before checking your phone, take 3 conscious breaths, setting an intention like, "May I meet today with clarity and kindness." The transition anchor: use doorways literally. Pause at the threshold of your home, your office, your car, and consciously let go of the energy of the space you're leaving, arriving fresh. The communication anchor. Before speaking, especially in tension, feel your feet on the ground. This roots you in the body, not just the reactive mind. The gratitude anchor. Let one daily routine, making tea, walking the dog, be a trigger to notice one specific thing you're grateful for in that moment. These are not extra tasks. They are ways of hijacking autopilot, of bending the routine of life back toward awareness. They are your hammer strokes on the hot metal of the day. Integration also means embracing skillful effort, which is fluid, not rigid. Sometimes effort means vigorous action, tackling a difficult project, having a courageous conversation. Other times, skillful effort means deliberate non-action, resting, waiting, listening. Wisdom is knowing the difference. It's the flexibility of bamboo in the wind, not the brittleness of a dry branch trying to stand rigid. As you practice this integration, you'll notice life doesn't necessarily get easier, but your relationship to it becomes more workable, more interesting, and far less personal. You become a participant observer in your own life, engaged yet free. And from this stable, integrated ground, you naturally begin to consider your place in the larger whole. How your one, well-lived life contributes to the healing of the world around you. This is the birth of purposeful, compassionate action. Let's continue. Bring to mind a person, a creature, or a place you care for deeply. Feel that natural pull of the heart. This is the seed. Now, we learn how to let that seed grow into a forest of compassionate action and find sustenance in the community of practice. Wisdom that remains private is like a tree falling in an empty forest. It must resonate, connect, and nourish others to fulfill its nature. Our path, though walked within, is perfected in relationship. Compassionate action is not grandiose. It is the logical, natural extension of seeing interconnectedness. If you understand that your peace is linked to your neighbor's peace, then acting to relieve suffering, their or yours, becomes common sense, not saintliness. It is the intelligent maintenance of the shared web. This action is most powerful when it's appropriate, the right action, for the right being, at the right time, with the right energy. It could be as vast as starting a social program or as intimate as truly listening to a friend without offering advice. It is the quality of the response, not its scale, that matters. Think of a mycelial network in a forest, the vast, underground web of fungal threads connecting trees. Through this network, trees share nutrients, send distress signals, and support the health of the entire forest. A mature tree will send sugars through the mycelium to a struggling sapling nearby. It's not sentimental, it's ecological intelligence. The health of the one is the health of the whole. Your compassionate action is you functioning as a conscious node in the human mycelial network. You share your emotional and practical resources not out of obligation, but from the understanding that we are literally sharing the same soil. Let me share an original story from a post-industrial town in the American Midwest. A factory closure left a deep scar of unemployment and despair. A local man, James, a former machinist with a quiet demeanor, didn't start a protest. He noticed a different need. Elderly residents, many alone, struggled to maintain their yards. James got his old mower running and started cutting one neighbor's grass. He didn't announce it. He just did it. Another neighbor saw. Soon, other out-of-work folks joined, fixing porches, cleaning gutters. They used a retired teacher's garage as a tool library. It wasn't a charity, it was a mutual aid web. They called it the upkeep. No one preached. They shared labor, then coffee, then stories. This network became the town's new, resilient social fabric, born from one man's appropriate, grounded response to the suffering right in front of him. He saw a thread loose in the tapestry and simply began to weave. That is compassionate action rooted in community. We cannot sustain this alone. This is the profound role of Sangha, the community of fellow travelers. It is the third jewel, alongside the Buddha, the ideal of awakening, and the Dharma, the teachings. A true Sangha isn't a social club. It is a reflective surface and a supportive structure. It's where your blind spots are gently mirrored, where your insights are confirmed, where your despair is held without judgment. It's the Sangha that says, "I've been there too," or "Have you considered this?" It provides the friction that polishes your understanding and the warmth that encourages your heart. Your Sangha might be a formal meditation group, a book club, a few trusted friends, or even the invisible community of authors and teachers whose words sustain you. Its core function is noble friendship, Kalyana Maitreta. A noble friend is not always agreeable. They are honest. They restrain you from harm, encourage your goodness, teach you what you don't know, and point toward freedom. They are the guardrails on the mountain path. In your own life, you can cultivate this. Seek out those who inspire your better nature. Be that noble friend for others, not by fixing them, but by listening deeply and speaking truth with kindness. Participate. Share your struggles as well as your insights. In doing so, you move from a mindset of solitary achievement to one of interdependent awakening. We liberate ourselves together. From this circle of care and community, our vision naturally expands. We begin to see our entire life, our work, our consumption, our creativity, not as separate compartments, but as expressions of our understanding. We are ready to explore what it means to live a life of right livelihood and purposeful contribution, to make our very existence a gift to the world that sustains us. Let's continue. Bring your attention to your hands. These hands have built, comforted, created, and held. They are your primary instruments of action in the world. Now, with the heart of compassion awakened and the support of community felt, we ask a vital question. How do we offer these hands, our time, our energy, and our skills in a way that is both nourishing to ourselves and healing to the world? This is the exploration of right livelihood and purposeful contribution. Right livelihood, part of the Noble Eightfold Path, is often simplified as, don't have a harmful job. But it is far more nuanced and positive. It is about aligning your daily work, whether paid or unpaid, in an office or a home, with the principles of non-harm, honesty, and compassion. It asks, does this activity diminish life, or support it? Does it create more confusion, or more clarity? Does it extract from the world, or contribute to its renewal? Your livelihood is not just a way to pay bills, it is one of your most significant karmic outlets, a primary channel through which your intentions become form in the world. Think of your work as a vessel you carry through your day. What are you pouring into it? Stress, resentment, and mindless routine? Or attention, care, and a spirit of service? And what does the vessel pour out into the world? Pollution, exploitation, and triviality? Or solutions, beauty, and genuine help? Right livelihood is the conscious crafting of that vessel and the mindful choosing of its contents. It is understanding that your work is not separate from your spiritual life, it is the very crucible where your spirituality is tested and manifested. Let me share an original story from the vineyards of Chile. A vintner named Alejandro inherited a family vineyard that used conventional, chemical-heavy methods to maximize yield. After a health scare, he began to study the land more deeply. He learned about the microbial life in the soil, the interconnectedness of the vines. He realized his high-yield process was producing robust but simple wine, while slowly killing the land's vitality. Shifting to biodynamic farming was a massive risk: lower yields, more labor, uncertain results. But he did it. Years later, his wines were celebrated not just for flavor, but for their distinct terroir, the taste of that specific, now thriving ecosystem. He said, "Before, I made wine from grapes. Now, I help the land express itself as wine. My job is not to force, but to midwife." Alejandro found right livelihood. He transformed his work from an act of extraction into an act of reciprocal care. His vessel now poured forth restoration, not depletion. You may not own a vineyard, but this principle applies everywhere. The administrative assistant who brings order and calm to a chaotic office is practicing right livelihood. The teacher who sees potential and fosters curiosity is practicing it. The programmer who designs technology that genuinely connects rather than addicts is practicing it. It is about infusing your role with Dhamma, with truth. It's doing what you do with full presence and the intention to leave things a little better than you found them. This naturally leads to the broader concept of purposeful contribution. Your contribution is your unique stitch in the social fabric. It answers the question, given my understanding, my skills, and my limited time, what is mine to do? Purpose is not a grand, preordained destiny. It is an emergent property of paying close attention to the world's needs and your own deep gladness. It is found at the intersection of what brings me alive and what serves the whole. Your practice here is one of discernment and small experiments. Don't wait for a grand calling. Look for the noble task directly in front of you. Is it to listen fully to this colleague? To make this product with impeccable integrity? To create art that reveals beauty? To simply be a stable, kind presence in your family? Start there. Pour your full awareness and care into that. As you do, the next right step will become clearer. Purpose is not a destination you reach, it is a quality you bring to the steps themselves. When your daily work becomes an expression of your values and your care, a profound integration occurs. There is no longer a split between my spiritual practice and my job. Your entire life becomes the practice ground. You experience a deep dignity and peace, knowing your energy is aligned with the flow of life, not fighting against it. And from this place of integrated, purposeful living, you are finally prepared to face life's inevitable conclusions and transitions with grace, understanding that even an ending is part of the sacred cycle. Let's continue. Feel the gentle, inevitable rhythm of your breath. Each in-breath a beginning, each out-breath a letting go, a small, willing release. This is the micro-practice for life's macro-releases. We have learned to live with purpose and care. Now, we must bring that same clarity and compassion to life's natural conclusions, to aging, to loss, and to the completion of cycles. This is not a morbid turn, but the final, beautiful integration of impermanence into the heart. It is learning to meet the setting sun with the same awe as the rising one. Our culture often treats aging and death as medical failures, as enemies to be fought with every weapon. But from the vantage point of Dharma, they are not errors in the system, they are features of the design. They are the natural, necessary closing of parentheses. To deny this is to live in a state of perpetual, low-grade war with reality. The path of wisdom is to make peace with the entire arc, to see aging not as decay, but as the maturation of the soul's understanding. To see loss not as pure tragedy, but as the painful but clean severing of a bond that was always, in its form, temporary. Imagine a magnificent old-growth redwood tree. Its bark is scarred by fire, its branches are fewer, its growth has slowed. But it possesses a dignity, a stillness, a profound presence that a sapling does not have. It has weathered storms. It has provided shelter for generations of creatures. It is a living library of sunlight and rain. Its very slowness is its wisdom. Our aging process can be like this, not a stripping away of what mattered, but a distillation into essence. The superficial concerns fall away. What remains is the core, love, connection, the simple appreciation of being. Our task is not to cling to the suppleness of the sapling, but to learn the deep, rooted grace of the redwood. Let me share an original story from the islands of Greece. On a small village square, there was a centuries-old olive tree, gnarled and hollow in parts, but still producing fruit. A developer wanted to remove it for a larger patio. The village was divided. The oldest woman in the village, Hagia Sophia, who rarely spoke in public, stood. She didn't argue with history or sentiment. She simply said, "This tree knows how to be old. We have forgotten. It teaches us how to be hollow yet fruitful, scarred yet alive. We do not need more space for tables. We need more space to remember how to live all the way to the end." The tree stayed. Hagia Sophia was pointing to the tree as a Dharma lesson in graceful aging, showing that value is not only in peak productivity, but in the wisdom of enduring, of providing shade and teaching simply by embodying the full cycle. When it comes to loss and grief, the teachings offer not an escape from pain, but a way to hold it without being destroyed by it. Grief is the natural, loving response to love in a world of impermanence. It is the price of attachment, and it is worth paying. The second arrow here is not the grief itself, but the added layers of, "this shouldn't have happened," "I can't go on," or "my story is over." The practice is to honor the clean pain of missing someone, while gently disentangling from the suffering of the story we wrap around it. It is to let the wave of grief wash through you, knowing you are the ocean, not the wave. A powerful practice in the face of loss or one's own mortality is the life review. Not with regret, but with the eye of a compassionate witness. Look back on your life as if you were reading a novel about a fascinating character. See their struggles, their triumphs, their flaws, their loves. Can you feel for them? Can you forgive them? Can you appreciate the arc of their story? This practice helps release the clinging to a specific, unlived future and allows you to make peace with the past, integrating it into the wholeness of your being. To live fully is to also practice dying fully, which means practicing letting go, every single day. Letting go of yesterday's resentments. Letting go of today's plan when life intervenes. Letting go of the identity of the healthy one when illness comes. Each small release is a rehearsal for the final one. It builds the muscle of non-attachment, which is not coldness, but the supreme flexibility to accept reality as it changes. When we can look at the entire cycle, birth, growth, contribution, aging, loss, with clear, compassionate eyes, we achieve a tranquility that is unshakable. We have made friends with time itself. From this peaceful completion, we are ready for the final, luminous insight, that our true nature was never born and will never die. We are ready to look directly into the nature of the awareness that has been witnessing this entire, beautiful, painful journey. Let's continue. Let everything fall away, the stories, the memories, the sense of a past or future. For just this moment, be here. Not as a person with a history, but as this simple, wakeful presence. What remains when you strip away all that changes? This is the inquiry into the nature of awareness itself. We've followed the river of life to its apparent end. Now, we turn to look at the sky in which the river flows. Awareness is not a thing you have, it is what you are, prior to all things. It is the silent, luminous witness that is never touched by what it sees. Think of a pristine, clear mirror. Images appear in it, a face, a tree, a cloud. The mirror reflects them perfectly. The face ages, the tree loses leaves, the cloud dissipates. The images are born, live, and die in the mirror. But is the mirror itself ever young, old, leafy, or dissolved? No. The mirror remains unchanged, simply reflecting whatever appears. Your awareness is that mirror. Thoughts, emotions, sensations, the entire drama of my life, these are the appearing images. They come and go. Awareness itself, the capacity to know, is untouched. It does not get better when a joyful image appears, nor does it crack when a painful one arises. It simply is. Recognizing yourself as this mirror-like awareness is the ultimate homecoming. This is not an abstract philosophy. You can verify it right now. Close your eyes. Listen to the sounds around you. Notice, there is the sound and the knowing of the sound. Now, try to find the edge of that knowing. Where does it stop? Can you find a boundary to your awareness? You can't. It is boundless, edgeless. It has no color, shape, or location. It is not in your head. Your head, and the thought of your head, appear within it. This aware space is your true ground of being. It is what the great traditions point to with words like spirit, consciousness, Buddha nature, or the ground of all being. Let me share an original story from the field of deep-sea exploration. A submersible pilot, Dr. Rivera, spent years studying the midnight zone of the ocean, a place of perpetual darkness. On one dive, she turned off all the sub's external lights. In the utter, absolute blackness, she expected nothing. But then, she began to notice something. It wasn't light, but a subtle, pervasive bioluminescence, the living light of creatures themselves. It had always been there, but was overwhelmed by her powerful beams. She described it later, "I went looking for life with my lights, but I found that life is light." The darkness wasn't empty, it was a canvas for this gentle, innate radiance. Your search for a solid self is like shining a powerful spotlight. It creates a dramatic character but blinds you to the subtle, ever-present radiance of awareness itself. When the spotlight of identification with thoughts and feelings turns off, what remains is not nothingness, but this innate, luminous knowing, the bioluminescence of consciousness. It is always here, quietly illuminating every experience. Realizing this transforms your relationship to everything. Problems don't disappear, but they lose their solid, threatening weight. You see that the thought, "I am devastated," is a dark cloud passing through the vast sky of your awareness. The sky isn't devastated. It holds the cloud. You are the sky. This understanding brings a profound, unshakable peace. It is the end of seeking, because you realize you are what you've been seeking. Your practice now shifts from doing to being, from cultivating qualities to recognizing the ground from which all qualities arise. Meditation becomes less about focusing on an object, the breath, a mantra, and more about resting as the subject, as the aware space itself. You gently inquire, who is aware? What is it that knows this breath, this sound, this thought? Don't look for a conceptual answer. Look for the felt sense of knowing. Fall back into that. This does not negate the relative world of cause and effect, of compassion and action. It perfects it. Now you can engage in life not as a fragile self trying to fix itself, but as this luminous awareness, spontaneously expressing itself as kindness, creativity, and care. Your actions become more authentic, less burdened by ego. You play your part in the human drama, but you know you are also the audience, the theater, and the empty space in which the play unfolds. With this recognition of our true nature as awareness, we come to the final, beautiful paradox of the path. Having found this unshakable ground, we must learn the ultimate release, not to cling even to this profound realization. We must let go of the final raft. Let's continue. There is a deep, quiet simplicity available now. A sense of having arrived at the source of the river. We have recognized the luminous, unchanging awareness that is our true nature. And now, with profound gentleness, we must perform the ultimate act of spiritual maturity, letting go of the path itself. Even the most beautiful map must be left behind when you are finally standing in the territory. Even the most profound realization can become a new object to cling to, a new, spiritual self, to defend. The final teaching is one of utter relinquishment. The Buddha famously used the parable of the raft. You use a raft to cross a dangerous river. Once across, you would not think to hoist the heavy raft onto your shoulders and carry it for the rest of your journey. You leave it behind with gratitude. The Dharma, the teachings, the practices, even the insights, are that raft. They are means to an end. The end is freedom. To cling to the means after they have served their purpose is to remain burdened. This is why the Buddha said, the Dharma is to be abandoned, as well as non-Dharma. When you are free, you don't carry the toolbox. You live in the house that has been built. Think of learning to play a sublime piece of music on the piano. At first, you are utterly dependent on the sheet music. You cling to every note, every marking. With practice, the music moves from the page into your hands, your muscles, your feeling. There comes a point where you no longer look at the sheet. You might even forget it exists. You and the music are one flowing expression. If you then insisted on holding the sheet music in your lap while performing, it would actually impede your artistry. The sheet music was essential, but its final gift is to be absorbed and then forgotten. Your realization must become so integrated that it is no longer a thing you have, but the air you breathe. Let me share an original story from the world of master craftsmanship. In Japan, there is a tradition of sword making where the final, crucial step is the differential hardening of the blade. The smith paints the blade with a special clay slurry, thick on the spine, thin on the edge, and then heats and quenches it. The clay causes different parts to cool at different rates, creating the legendary curve and the razor-sharp edge. After the quenching, however, the blade is covered in a hard, brittle scale of burnt clay and iron. This scale must be painstakingly removed by polishing with successively finer stones. The master polisher does not stop when the scale is gone. He continues, for days, polishing the bare metal itself to a mirror finish. The final act is to remove the last vestige of the very material that created the blade's perfection. The clay was absolutely necessary, but to reveal the true, glorious nature of the steel, every trace of it must be let go. Your spiritual practices and insights are that clay. They shape you. But to reveal your true, unadorned nature, you must, in time, willingly polish away even your attachment to being spiritual, awakened, or a practitioner. This final letting go can feel frightening. The mind screams, but this understanding is my most precious possession. This practice is my identity. That is the last vestige of the ego, disguised in spiritual robes. True freedom has no label. It is ordinary. It is simple. It drinks tea, washes dishes, and greets the day without a story about being free. So how do you practice this? You practice by falling in love with the ordinary. You let your meditation become so seamless it is just how you are when you are still. You let your mindfulness become so natural it is just waking up to the present, again and again, without congratulating yourself. You perform acts of compassion without a whisper of, "I am compassionate." You notice when spiritual pride arises, the subtle feeling of being ahead of others, of having gotten it, and you smile and let that thought go like any other. You use the teachings not to build a new self, but to dismantle the last walls of the old one. In this space of final simplicity, something beautiful happens, the return of beginner's mind. The wonder of a child looking at a leaf, free of concepts. The direct experience of life, unfiltered by any teaching. The path leads you back to the garden you never actually left, but now you see it with the clear, humble eyes of your original nature. You are home, and you realize you were always home. The journey was the process of removing the layers of forgetting. With the path fully integrated and then released, we stand naked, authentic, and utterly at peace. We are ready for the final words, not as an ending, but as a silent pointing back to the truth that has been here all along, and an invitation to live from that truth, fully and freely, for the benefit of all. Let's continue. Let everything be exactly as it is. The sound of my voice, the feeling of your body at rest, the space around you. There is nothing to achieve, nowhere to get to. This is it. This right here. When we finally let go of the path, what remains is the unadorned moment, life lived without the filter of seeking, without the story of becoming. This is not a passive state, it is the most alive, responsive, and creative way of being. It is what remains when you stop trying to be anything other than what you already are. Imagine walking through a forest you know intimately. You're not looking for the trail markers anymore. You're not consulting the map. You're not even going for a hike. You are simply walking. Because you are at home in the forest, you notice things the seeking mind missed, the particular way light falls through those specific pine needles, the scent of damp earth after yesterday's rain, the faint chatter of squirrels having a territorial dispute. Your walk is richer, more immediate, because you are not focused on the destination. You have become one with the act of walking. Your entire life can become like this walk. You meet each moment as it is, not as a stepping stone to some better future moment where you'll finally be awake or happy. This is the fruit of the entire journey, to live from presence, not for presence. Your meditation is no longer something you do for 20 minutes, it is the quality of attention you bring to making breakfast, to listening to a friend, to feeling the wind on your face. Your spiritual practice is no longer a separate activity, it is your posture toward life itself. A posture of openness, curiosity, and non-grasping. Let me share an original story from the world of traditional navigation in Polynesia. The master navigators, who could sail thousands of miles across open ocean without instruments, spoke of a state called Te Lapa. It's described not as a skill, but as a way of seeing. After years of studying stars, waves, bird flight, and cloud formations, there came a point where the navigator didn't calculate the course. The ocean spoke to them. They perceived faint, underwater lightning like streaks of light, Te Lapa, that pointed toward islands. They felt the swell patterns in their bones. The knowledge had become so integrated that it was a direct perception. They weren't using navigation, they were navigating, in seamless unity with the sea and sky. Your journey to awakening is similar. You study the teachings, the stars and waves, you practice mindfulness, reading the swells. Until one day, you are no longer practicing spirituality. You are simply living in harmonious alignment with the way things are. You perceive the Te Lapa, the intuitive flashes of wisdom, not as special events, but as the natural functioning of a mind unclouded by separation. Living the unadorned moment means embracing functional humanity. You still have preferences, you prefer warmth to cold, health to sickness, connection to isolation. But these preferences no longer rule you. You can feel disappointment without becoming disappointment. You can have a goal without your peace depending on its achievement. You participate fully in life's dance without needing the music to play your favorite song forever. In this space, action becomes spontaneous appropriateness. You don't have to think, what would a compassionate person do? Compassionate action arises because there is no person blocking it, just a clear seeing of need and a natural movement to meet it. It could be picking up litter, offering a smile, or creating a work of art. It is not planned, it flowers from the conditions of the moment. Your only practice now is gentle remembering. When you find yourself lost in a story of past or future, in a wave of craving or aversion, you simply notice, forgetting. And with kindness, you return to the sensory reality of this breath, this sound, this sensation. This return is not a failure, it is the heartbeat of freedom. The constant, gentle reorientation to what is real. This unadorned life is the greatest gift you can offer the world, a human being fully present, responsive, and at peace. It is a quiet revolution. From this ground of being, we can now look back at the whole grand cycle of existence, the arising and passing of all things, with a heart of perfect peace and understanding. We see that even the journey we just took was part of the eternal play of consciousness. Let's continue. Feel the great, turning wheel of your own breath. In and out. Beginning and ending, and beginning again. We have come to rest in the unadorned present. From this still point, we can gaze with clear eyes at the great cycles that once ensnared us, the cycles of nature, of society, of our own personal histories, and see them not as prisons, but as the sacred, dancing expression of life itself. This is wisdom seeing the eternal return. Not as a literal recurrence, but as the profound understanding that within each ending sleeps a beginning, and within each beginning rests the seed of its end. To see this is to make peace with the cosmos. Before, we saw samsara as a painful cycle of habit from which we sought escape. From the vantage point of awakening, we see the same cycles as the natural, rhythmic expression of dependent origination, empty of any inherent problem. The seasons turn. Civilizations rise and fall. Relationships blossom and transform. Cells divide and die. This is not tragedy, it is the magnificent, necessary metabolism of existence. Our suffering came from picking one part of the cycle, the blossom, the peak, the youth, and demanding it be the whole story. Wisdom delights in the whole story. It finds beauty in the decay that fertilizes new growth. It finds peace in the dissolution that makes space for new form. Think of a traditional Ouroboros, the serpent eating its own tail. It is an ancient symbol of cyclicality, of eternity. From one perspective, it could look like self-destruction, a futile loop. From the perspective of wisdom, it is a perfect image of self-sustenance, of the endless transformation of energy. The end literally nourishes the beginning. Your own life is this Ouroboros. Your childhood dies to give birth to your adulthood. Your old beliefs die to allow new understanding. Even your physical body's constant cellular death is what allows for renewal and life. When you stop resisting the eating of the tail, the necessary endings, you align yourself with the cosmic rhythm. You become a conscious participant in the eternal return. Let me share an original story from the history of ecology in the American Great Plains. For generations, farmers fought the natural cycle of prairie fires, seeing them as pure destruction. They suppressed every spark. Over decades, the prairies became choked with dense, woody undergrowth. The ecosystem grew weaker, biodiversity plummeted. Then, scientists and indigenous stewards helped them remember, fire is not the enemy of the prairie, it is its crucible. The prairie grasses have deep roots that survive the flames. The fire clears the choking brush, releases nutrients locked in old growth, and allows sunlight to reach the soil, triggering the germination of seeds that require heat to open. The farmers learned to conduct controlled burns. They witnessed the destruction give way, within a single season, to explosions of wildflowers and lush, resilient grass stronger than before. The cycle of fire and rebirth was not a problem to be solved, but a sacred partnership to be entered. Your personal fires, losses, failures, dark nights, are like this. They feel like annihilation. But if you have developed deep roots in awareness, they burn away only what is ready to go, clearing space for unimaginable new growth that your old, choked mental landscape could never have supported. From this wisdom, we engage with the world's cycles differently. We practice regenerative action, action that understands it is part of a cycle. We give, knowing we have received. We teach, knowing we are students. We build, knowing that maintenance and eventual dissolution are part of the project. Our work, our relationships, our very lives become offerings into the cycle, not monuments against it. This brings a profound, quiet joy to the act of living. You watch your own energy wax and wane through the day, through the years, with curiosity, not alarm. You participate in projects without the desperate need for them to be your permanent legacy. You love people without the terror of eventual parting, because you understand that parting, too, is a holy part of the cycle of connection. You are no longer a leaf terrified of autumn, you are the tree, who knows the rhythm of holding on and letting go in its very fibers. Having made peace with the great turning, and having found our place within it as conscious, compassionate participants, we arrive at the final consideration. What do we do with this understanding? How does it ripple forward? It is time to speak of legacy, not of stone and steel, but of the silent transmission of wisdom itself. Let's continue. This is our final sitting together in this form. Let there be a deep, grateful silence within you. We have traveled from the first ache of suffering to the quiet heart of eternity. Now, we arrive at the natural conclusion of any true journey, the silent transmission. What has been seen, what has been understood, yearns not to be stored, but to be shared. Not through grand proclamation, but through the quality of a life lived in alignment. Your awakening is not a private treasure. It is a torch. And a torch, by its nature, exists to illuminate, both your own path and, by its very glow, the space around it for others. The most powerful teaching is not a lecture, it is an embodied presence. It is the calm you bring into a chaotic room. It is the patience you exhibit when everything is pushing for hurry. It is the clear no spoken from compassion, not fear. It is the joyful yes born from engagement, not obligation. People may never know you meditate. They may never hear you quote a scripture. But they will feel the space you hold. They will notice your resilience. They will be affected by your kindness. This is the silent transmission, the Dharma expressed not in words, but in being. You become a living landmark, a proof that peace is possible, that a human being can live with grace amidst the storm. Think of a lighthouse. It does not chase down ships in the fog, shouting instructions. It simply stands, grounded in rock, shining its steady, rhythmic light. It does not discriminate, illuminating only certain vessels. Its light is an unconditional offering to the sea. Ships, the lost, the weary, the storm-tossed, see it and can orient themselves. They must still do the work of steering, but the light provides a reference point, a possibility of safe harbor. Your integrated life is that lighthouse. You don't need to rescue anyone. You simply need to stand in your own truth, with consistency and compassion. Your very presence becomes a guiding light for those ready to see it. Your calm becomes a refuge. Your joy becomes an invitation. Let me share one final, original story. In the high desert, there is a phenomenon called a nurse rock. In the harsh, parsed landscape, a large, stable boulder creates a microclimate in its lee. It provides shade, collects dew, and shelters a pocket of soil from the relentless wind. Over decades, a seed lands there. It grows, not in the open desert, but in the protected niche created by the rock. That first plant, in turn, creates more shade, drops leaves that become mulch, and slowly, a tiny, thriving ecosystem emerges in the shelter of that once lifeless stone. The boulder didn't try to create a garden. It simply was, stable, present, enduring. By its mere presence, it created the conditions for life to take hold. You can be a nurse rock. By doing your own work of becoming stable, present, and clear, you create a sheltered psychic space around you. Without any preaching, you create conditions where others might find the nourishment to begin their own growth. Your healed wounds become shelters. Your quiet mind becomes a space where others can hear their own thoughts. So, what is your responsibility? It is not to become a teacher unless that is your specific calling. Your responsibility is to tend your own light. To keep your torch clear and bright through continued, gentle remembrance. To polish the mirror of your awareness. To meet each day with a beginner's heart. In doing this faithfully, the transmission happens on its own. A grandchild will remember your patience. A colleague will recall your integrity in a crisis. A stranger will be touched by a moment of your genuine attention. The seeds you plant in this way are invisible, but they are immortal. The path that began with a question ends not with an answer, but with a living question. How can I meet this moment with more openness? How can I serve the life before me? This living question keeps the journey alive, fresh, and compassionate until your very last breath. And so, we conclude not with an ending, but with a returning. You are equipped now. You understand the map of your own mind, the causes of suffering, the illusion of self, the reality of change, the power of presence, the radiance of awareness. You have metaphors to guide you and practices to steady you. The rest is living. The Buddha's final words were, "Strive on with diligence." It is not a command to struggle, but an encouragement to stay lovingly awake. To care for this understanding. To walk your path with care, for your own sake and for the sake of all beings whose paths invisibly intertwine with yours. Thank you for walking this path with Monk's Temple. May the peace and understanding that have arisen here take root in your life and flower in ways you cannot yet imagine. May you be a beacon of calm in a restless world. May you know the profound joy of being exactly who you are. May you walk in wisdom, and may your walk be a blessing. The temple bell rings softly. The talk is over. But the practice is just beginning. Be well. Be at peace. Farewell.